What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers Podcast, and I am your host, John. On today's episode, I want to focus on how you carry yourself determines how the world treats you. But firstly, I want to touch back on to the criticisms that I had, as I don't feel I covered them properly in episode 2. And I've also been told that I didn't kind of cover them in as much depth by other people. So one of the big criticisms I had was I said a lot. And for me, this is just kind of a thinking sound. And I'm going to do my best not to vocalize it. If I do it too much, I'll try to edit it out. The editing process is a bit more straightforward than I thought, and using CapCut, it doesn't seem to be as difficult to kind of take out small segments as I once thought. So that shouldn't be too bad. I still haven't found a way to kind of smoothly transfer between cutscenes, but I'm sure I'll learn that the more I go. And obviously at the minute I'm using the free version, but if I was to upgrade to the Pro, I would then have a bit more kind of freedom with the editing that I could do. But that's going to come down the line. Obviously, once this podcast progresses, it's still very much in its early stages at the minute. So that was probably one of the biggest criticisms in the sense of how I was speaking, the pauses. Like the pauses didn't seem to be the problem with people. It was more the fact of that filler word It, again, for somebody that is annoyed by repetitive sound themselves, I can understand as a consumer, as a listener, why that would be annoying. So I am going to do my best to address that. Another one of the criticisms was the overall energy that I was bringing to the table. And I did kind of touch on this in episode 2, but I don't think I emphasized enough how much of a criticism it was. That for people who know me and who know how I carry myself and who know the kind of energy that I bring and that I talk with and the enthusiasm behind what I say and the thought that I put into what I say, for them it was almost looking at like a hollow version of myself, for as much as I can describe. And like I said, I don't want to come on here and be a character. I want to be as honest as I can, as much as I can, and have the same for my guests in order to dissect and kind of look at our experiences as much as we can. So in terms of other criticisms I had, the intro again was very lifeless. So that I had to address. Also the kind of, in episode 2, I added an intro and outro video and music. This was a last minute kind of addition. And it was after talking to my friend, kind of sitting with that information and those criticisms for a couple of days, when he was saying it was like a bit stale kind of in the intro and the outro. And as a listener to a lot of podcasts, there should almost be like a rhythmic intro that leads you into it, with a lot of like slogans or I've just said sorry. with a lot of jingles and that, you kind of want to finish them yourself, but it's hard to figure all that out at once. So like I said before, I'm figuring it out as I go, and I'm trying to slot each piece in as I can. There's a lot to consider in terms of the content that I'm going to produce, what I'm going to say, how I'm going to present it, managing the space, managing the content itself, the dialogue, the editing, the audio. It's all a one-man band, as I say. So for the most part, I've got to learn each avenue to a set amount as it goes, and getting as much feedback as I can from people close to me and anybody watching this is going to help me progress that forward. And getting those criticisms sometimes can be hard. So when I was asking people for their criticisms, for the most part, they was trying to toe a line, walking on eggshells, and that's not going to help this grow. That's not going to help me perform better. As hard as it is to tell people the honest truth, if something comes out poorly or bad, like, it is hard to tell them, but they're going to have a better product or a better thing in the end of it. So although those conversations and those truths are hard to tell people, it definitely is worth it. And that brings me on to a kind of personal criticism from episode 2, which I've watched it back a couple of times now through the editing process and just trying to look at what I can build on next time. And it's boring. And I think that's what people were trying to tell me before, that in a nicer way. But as much as I do talk, when I was looking back from it to see if I can take any shorts from it and everything else, I think throughout the whole 27-minute episode, I found 2 shorts where it was like, okay, what I'm saying here is probably worth making a short out of. To me, that's not good. That means the majority of that episode was filler speak. That's not how I want this to be, but it is a learning curve in how to get to that deeper stuff at a faster rate. So please bear with me with that, but I am working on it. More criticisms from the second episode was I forgot to turn the light on, so it was a little bit dark. The first episode I recorded at night, so instinctively I turned the light on. Whereas the second episode I recorded in the daytime, I didn't think to turn the light on in the room. Today I'm recording in the daytime again, but I've also turned the light on. So I'm hoping that the lighting's more similar to episode 1, because that was a bit brighter. It kind of brought out the panels in the background a little bit more, which gives the viewer a little bit more to kind of draw the eye if they are watching this through video. In terms of more criticisms from episode 2, I haven't had as much feedback from people close to me, but that's just because it's been a hectic week for myself. So I haven't really been kind of touching base with too many people or looking into things too much. Even trying to find the time to do this episode has been quite difficult. I told myself last week, and I said on the episode last week, that I wanted to post on Sundays. I still do want to try keep myself to that as much as possible. Obviously, sometimes life intervenes and things come up, this, that and the other. But I do want to try keep that, just to keep myself in the routine of posting. And again, it's easy to lose sight and drop the ball and just kind of veer off course a little bit. Especially when you're starting something up. Like, it takes a while before it becomes a habit. I'm only 2 episodes into this, and it's not yet a habit to sit down, record and do a podcast. So I'm still building those foundations. The other kind of self-criticism I had from episode 2 was I rushed to speak or rushed to get to the point, and like I was trying to say in episode 2, I kind of missed the mark. Like, it was trying to tell you about finding my feet and how the podcast is going so far. But because I had such excitement from episode 1, and finally after 1.5 to 2 years of building this podcast, it's got to the point where that excitement just wanted me to do an episode. And one, life doesn't allow for that. I'm far too busy in my day to day. I've got too much going on to be able to just sit down and record all day, every day. And 2, I would just be putting out useless stuff. So as much as I want to come into these episodes with an idea and build from there, there has to be some form of structure. And this ties back into the feedback that I was getting from my mate, in that across all episodes, there has to be some kind of structure. No matter how loose the structure is, there has to be something to work with, something that you know you're going to get when you come to watch these episodes. So that's what I'm going to try to build into these. The first part of the episode, I'll try to tell you how the podcast is going, maybe a little bit of like how personal things are going for me as much as I can without being over intrusive into my own life. And just kind of build as we go rather than try to spit it all out at once, because there's more that I'm going to learn as I'm doing this podcast. So doing one episode on how to build a podcast isn't going to work. And I don't want to do a full episode every couple of weeks just on how to build a podcast. I'd rather update you along the journey and let you know when it's fresh in my head rather than a week or 2 weeks down the line when I've got time to do a podcast development solo episode or something like that. Other than that, there's not many criticisms I can think of at the minute. There's probably some that I've missed, and I will try to address those as we go on in future episodes. Like I say, it's going to be a constant feedback loop of what went well, what went bad, what should I carry on doing, what should I kind of try to nip out and stop doing, or what do I need to do more of, less of. So it's going to constantly be an adjustment, but I'm fine to do that adjustment on the go. That's kind of where I'm a bit more comfortable. Obviously you can plan, and a certain amount of planning is fine, but too much planning, I feel too rigid. I feel like I'll be stuck in my ways. So once I've kind of covered that initial update on myself and the podcast, I'll move on to the main topic of the episode. If that's a solo episode, it will be the solo topic chat, and I'll try to talk through that topic as much as I can. It is a lot more difficult to hold a one-way conversation than I first thought, even for myself. And I think that's something that is greatly underestimated for people that do podcasts and do kind of present things to an audience that isn't there. To imagine you're talking to somebody and break that, I think it's the fourth wall, and talk to them as if they're in the room with you, can be confusing for yourself and the audience, and especially when you're first trying to do it. To drop between like storytelling and then talking directly to a person or to people, there's an art in the transition. So that's going to take time to learn, but I will do my best. I want to carry on ending the episodes with a seed for you to kind of take away. If you've survived the entire episode, congratulations. And you deserve a little something to kind of food for thought, something to percolate in your mind going forward, and try to plant the seed of kind of personal development within yourself. So that's going to be the kind of base structure. To outline it briefly again, without all of the interference, there'll be the update on the podcast and myself, then a broad topic of whatever the episode is focusing on in as much detail as I can, or from as many perspectives as I can. And then I'll tie out the episode with a seed of thought for you to go away with, and hopefully bring your own kind of epiphanies and inspirations into your own life. So to start with, the topic of today's episode on how you carry yourself defines how the world treats you. This is a very big thought or understanding of mine, that how you carry yourself determines how other people will treat you. Now, I've been in situations where I've been called sir in my early 20s and felt completely out of place. And I've been in situations where people have crossed the street from me to avoid me. And regardless of the situation, in those times, I was the same person in essence, but it was what I was projecting outward onto the world that reflected how they treated me in those moments. Now, the time that the person crossed the street from me, I was steaming down the road, incredibly aggressive. Like, you wouldn't want to talk to me in those times. I wasn't an approachable person. In the times where people was calling me sir and treating me far nicer than most people probably would, if he was just dressed casually. Again, it felt out of place to me, but it was how I was carrying myself. I was dressed smartly, I was clean, I was fresh, I smelled good, I was nicely dressed. And how people treat you when you push that out compared to aggression or looking scruffy and smelly and sweaty and this, that and everything else. Again, time and a place. If you've just done a hard day's work and you're coming back and you do labour or something like that and you're a bit smelly or sweaty, that is fine. You're coming back from work, it's a situation. But how you carry yourself in your personal time, in your day-to-day, like, I've done jobs where I get dirty and dusty and everything else, and the first thing I want to do when I get home is clean myself up, because, well, I don't like being dirty. I don't like things clogging my skin. That's a personal kind of thing from having eczema as a child. But having just that outward appearance of scruffy and everything else, it's, like, don't get me wrong, people will appreciate if you've done a hard day's graft, but at the same time, it's how long that lasts for. Do you know what I mean? If you've come off work and it's a day or two later and you've still got paint on your nails or plaster in your hair or this or that, that's far less excusable than if it's day off. So again, it's fine to be a little bit messy at times, but your default should always be restoring yourself to a point where you're clean and presentable, not even for everybody else, but for yourself. How you take care of yourself is going to be far more powerful than anything else. So if you want to be scruffy and you have that kind of style about you, by all means go for it. But you can do it in a way where it is presentable or clean. Like, what's a nice way to say it? You can look bummy without being bummy. And if that's your style, that's cool. But you don't have to stink along with it and not wash and this, that and everything else. Again, there's going to be probably massive debates that people could have about frequency of hygiene and what's actually too much cleaning, what's good for you, what's natural, what's this, what's that. And I think that's the kind of beauty, but also the horror of the world these days, is you can argue every single side of it. Like, there is probably an argument out there for never washing at all, and there's probably an argument out there for washing constantly. But again, every person is unique, so you need to find your kind of mid-ground or your happy medium. But that's completely veered off topic. I'm so sorry. To get back on topic, with how you kind of carry yourself and everything else, like even down to your posture, how you talk, how the words you use, the way you walk, These are all reflections on yourself. Now, a lot of people struggle with posture and standing up straight or sitting up straight in their daily lives. There's sometimes reasons for these, obviously like muscular reasons and reasons in just day-to-day life, where if you sit in an office job, you'll tend to slouch a lot more because of it's a more easier position for your body to sit in for an extended period of time. It's incredibly hard to sit with your back completely straight, unsupported for an extended period of time. So most people don't do it. But when you're walking around, you can consciously kind of draw your shoulders back. Again, there's boundaries to it. If you pull your shoulders back too much, you're going to look like you've got a pigeon chest. And you're going to look like you're trying to beef yourself up. But again, there's a happy medium where you're standing up straight enough for your posture. Now, there's going to be some people that can stand up straight as anything and look comfortable or look natural. And for other people, they're going to look like they're trying to stretch and gain an extra inch in height. There's a learning curve to it, but it all draws back into how you're carrying yourself and how you present to the world. So if you're slouching over, not only is it pushing kind of your own self-image down, it's literally compressing your own body. So when you draw your shoulders in, you're making it harder for your body to function. So sitting up straight or standing up straight is going to be far more beneficial, even from your body's perspective, let alone the outward perspective of the world. No matter where you kind of look at it from, standing up straight and having better posture and carrying yourself in a better way overall, it benefits you in multiple ways, from literally your health to your mindset to how people treat you. So to go through the adjustments to get to that stage, it is going to be tedious. It is going to be time consuming. There are tricks that you can do if you sit in an office. For example, if you sit at a desk all day and you're on an office chair, get a tennis ball, put it behind your back, and anytime you kind of slouch, the ball will start to drop behind your back. You can consciously sit back up. But again, it's the small things. It's those conscious decisions to, I'm slouching, sit back up. Tennis ball or not, the more conscious you are of how you're sitting and what you're projecting to the world, the more you will be kind of in tune with it and what you need to do yourself. So there's exercises that you could do that would, from a muscular standpoint, improve your posture, but it all starts with making that conscious decision to improve it. So to reference back to episode 2, I said I started to do press-ups every day just to build in a small consistent routine. The plan was for that to be so small that I would never fail. Well, I failed. I missed a day and I got annoyed with myself because it is such a small task. But sometimes that happens. Like even today, I didn't feel great before recording this episode, but I wanted to do it anyway because in life, you're not always going to feel great. Sometimes you need to push through. There's a lot of people out there that do a lot of amazing things. And when you see them, you will see it and you'll more than likely think it's amazing. But you never know how they feel in those moments. A lot of people can wake up with beautiful scenery and feel absolutely awful. A lot of people can wake up in what most people would consider hell and feel great. So it really does depend kind of on yourself when you're going to push through those situations and when you're going to kind of take the gas off. So what do you do in those situations? Well, I felt annoyed with myself for a little bit. I beat myself up for a little bit, but eventually you jump back on. And the next day, I done it again. Now I was going to double down and do 4 sets of 15, but I was so mentally drained. Obviously, that was part of the reason why I didn't do them the day before, that even doing the 2 sets was a milestone. So I'd done the 2 sets, took the win, and went on with my day. Now, sometimes that's how it's going to have to be. You're not going to fix these things overnight. You're not going to improve your posture overnight. There are short fixes, like there's a harness that would pull your shoulders back, but other than stretching the muscle physically, it doesn't solve the problem because you're now reliant on something else. Now, while it would stretch one side of the muscle, it doesn't tighten the other. Now, there would probably be some science that because there's less strain on that muscle, that it would shorten over time anyway, while the other one is stretching, but it's not gonna have the impact that taking conscious action is gonna have. Now, anytime you bring something into your conscious mind and you keep reminding yourself of it, very much like with episode 1 and 2 of this podcast. Once I'd let out episode 1, it was constantly in my mind then. So I wanted to rush to episode 2 and push it and push it and push it. And then that all caused basically a tidal wave of go, 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 go. And then a crash of, I don't know what to do. And with life going on in the background and that all happening in the foreground, it got a bit chaotic. So sometimes these things happen. You've got to take them in the stride. You literally just got to calm down, step back, see where everything's going, and relax your mind for a minute. It's very easy to get caught up in the problem itself, whereas that problem, no matter how big, the solution's going to start with something small, majority of the time. So you need to just slow yourself down and find the point where that picks up. That small kind of thing that you can work on and build it up from there. So having that conscious thought of my posture and how I carry myself and what I present to the world is how people treat me. Making the small changes with that mindset will have a trickle-down effect, and those ripples will feed out and they will eventually create those bigger waves within the shift of your personality, your persona, I guess, your avatar, depending on how you want to look on the human being. But regardless, those small shifts in understanding that if you want people to treat you differently, then the changes have to start with yourself. That will trickle out and create the shifts in which you want to get to, but you have to start small. So let's put this into a real world situation. You want to make more friends, you want to meet new people, you want to talk to more people. Smile at people. Like, if you don't create those opportunities, you'll never have them. So if you're not smiling at people when you're walking around or when you're around people, you're not going to be approachable. So again, it's not a fact of you have to make 100 friends overnight, but just making a small tweak to your personality or your persona or how you present to the world will change how people reflect back to you and how people treat you. So taking that moment to consciously decide on what you want to project, that's going to be where the difference is made. If you're going for a job interview and you want to get the job, no matter the job, dress like you want it. Dress like it means everything to you, because that's what they want to see. So if you turn up there and you're dressed as if you're lounging around the house, straight away, no matter what qualifications you have, they're going to take that initial read of yourself and see the effort that you put into yourself beyond anything else. Because if you don't put effort into yourself, what effort are you going to put into anything else? So even if what you project is... Sorry, I've not lost my train of thought, but kind of lost where to push the idea. If the effort that you put into what you're bringing to a situation that you feel is important is subpar by another person's perspective, no matter what, you're gonna likely fail. So with this podcast, to kind of give it an example, if I would have started this podcast sitting on the floor in this room before I put the panels up, before I decorated and painted and freshened it up and everything else, my confidence in the surroundings and the image that would have likely portrayed probably would not have got the response that I wanted or the image that I wanted to put out there. So that's why I delayed it, and that's why I put the effort into making the space what it is. And for that, it took time. It took the small moves, the little decisions, and in order to get to this stage. Now, I knew this stage was what I wanted to get to, but I couldn't just get here. Even if I was in a position financially to rent a podcast space that was already set up with microphones, cameras, editing equipment, there's nothing to say it would have had the image that I wanted to portray, or the comfort that I wanted to portray, or that I would be comfortable in the space and be able to portray things how I wanted to be, or work how I wanted to work. So the biggest kind of turn away from going to an actual professional podcast studio to do this was, if I'm rambling or if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I'm in a groove, I don't want to think about the cost efficiency of running over. If I'm having a conversation with somebody and it's run for an hour and we're still deep in conversation, I want to be able to let it run. Now, if I was in a studio that was run by the hour, I wouldn't have that freedom. I would forever be clock watching. Now, as this podcast stands, like I say, this studio is completely basic. From what you see, there is 3 chairs in this room. The two on camera here, and one that I use up at the laptop for editing. That is it. There's no clocks, there's nothing else. It's the only stuff in this room is the stuff for me to do the podcast. And because of that, I kind of lose track of time. So even now, I don't know how long I've been recording for. Episodes 1 and 2, I didn't know how long I was recording for. I just went as long as felt comfortable and as long as the conversation would run. So sometimes you just need to find that comfortable groove where you are comfortable. Where there are limitations, and I could obviously set up a clock easily or set up a timer on my phone or put a watch on to know how long the episodes are running for. But at the same time, I want to put as much of my focus into thinking about these things as I can. Sorry, I just had a bit of a coughing fit, so I just had to edit that out and come back in. I have no idea how the transition's going to go, but best of luck to me. But to try get kind of back on topic, where it's like what you put out to the world and how you present yourself is how the world treats you. So if I didn't feel comfortable and confident in the level of content that I was putting out, then I don't think anybody would stick around to see how it progresses. So although there is a point where you just have to start, you also have to be comfortable with that starting point. Now, I always kind of dress pretty much the same. I'm always wearing a black t-shirt. I don't put a lot of thought into what I'm wearing. I don't care. Like, as long as I'm clean and tidy in that sense, then a plain black t-shirt, a pair of jeans or a pair of joggers will serve me fine. The thought behind how you carry yourself doesn't have to mean that you're spending hundreds and thousands of pounds on what you're wearing. It's about how you carry yourself in your own skin. So regardless, I don't care if the top that I'm wearing costs a fiver, a tenner, £20 or £100. If it does the job, it does the job. Now, as long as I'm comfortable in that t-shirt, it doesn't really matter. In the terms of like logos and everything else, I don't care for branding. I'm not really materialistic in that sense. The only time I kind of get a bit materialistic or care about branding is when it really affects quality. So I try not to buy like cheap trainers or cheap jackets, because trainers keep your feet dry and jackets keep you dry. But other than that, it's fairly simple in how I dress. So I don't really associate that too much in how you carry yourself. It's like I say, like how you talk about yourself, how you stand, how you walk, how you look after yourself, if you look after yourself. Now, having that kind of level of self-care and self-love is incredibly important for multiple reasons that I don't even think I could get into on one episode, or even talking by myself, because there are things that I would miss entirely. But looking after yourself and having that kind of appreciation for yourself, that is where it all starts. If you can't appreciate yourself, how's anybody else meant to appreciate you? And that's going to kind of tie into the seed that I want to leave this episode with. But I think there's a bit more that I need to explain around this topic to kind of cover it well, where I've veered off in a few places. There's a lot where it's every situation in life is unique. So there are times where you're going to have to be flexible with your demeanor. Again, like, you can go around smiling to people, but if you're in the wrong environment, nobody's going to smile back, nobody's going to care, and it's going to ruin your experience. You're going to think everybody's miserable, everybody's horrible, nobody wants to talk to you, and that's the mindset that you're going to carry. But that's in that place, in that situation. So you need to understand how to be flexible within yourself. It's not always going to be in your best interest to be an open book. Sometimes it's going to be far better for you to be a bit reserved or a little bit... Sorry, voice a bit croaky. Sometimes it's going to be in your best interest to be a bit reserved, hold something back, and sometimes it's going to be a bit more of a kind of open share situation in order to get you over the hump. It's down to you to be socially smart in how you carry yourself, and that's kind of where the complexities get into it, of kind of having a fluid personality, where you've got to understand when it's time to be professional, when it's time to be friendly, when it's time to be optimistic, outgoing, and more yourself. So the way that I've always described this is there's versions of John that people get where it's like sometimes it's John Light, sometimes it's John Zero, sometimes it's Diet John. Like depending on the situation in life that I meet you depends on the version of me that you get. And that's not to say that I'm a different person. It's to say that in those situations, there needed to be a different side of me shown. And that's fine. Like, sometimes it's going to be more important to be stoic or more inviting or more outgoing. And these are all situational. It's only ever going to be once you're in that situation where you know how you're going to be. So until you're in it, you can only speculate. And even still, it's constantly going to be changing. You can go into the same scenario 100 times. And the 101st time you go in there, something different happens out of the normal. You never know how things are going to go. All you can do is kind of form a best form of practice. So if you know, like when you go to work, there's certain sides of yourself that you can show, or when you're with your friends, there's a certain side of yourself that you show. Like, again, it's just being conscious of that flexibility within your persona or within your personality. And the more that you're conscious of that, the more you'll be able to kind of control it and not manipulate it. That sounds very much like a negative word, but maneuver it to where it's more beneficial for yourself. So for example, when you are at work, you know, okay, cool, I can let out this side of myself, but I can also add in a bit more of the fun side without getting myself into trouble or kind of oversharing my personal life. Like, personally, I like to keep different areas of life segmented or compartmentalized, because it's just far easier. If work life gets too involved in personal life, or personal life gets too involved in work life, there's never any escape. I like to be able to, when I go into work mode, go into work mode. When I'm in friend mode, I'm in friend mode. When I'm in home mode, I'm in home mode. When I'm in dad mode, I'm in dad mode. Like, having the ability to switch between the modes is an integral skill in that sense, because I can manage my expectations of myself a lot better. I know that when I go to work, I don't have to think about being the best friend possible or giving advice or this or that. I go there, I do my job, I come home. That's it. When I'm with my friends, I know I don't have to think about work or think about any of those kind of stresses. I can think about the things I want to talk about with my friends, my personal aspects and the things that I'm working on, my projects and this and that. I don't really talk to many people at work about my projects yet, because again, I don't mix those circles too much. There's a couple of people that I talk to a bit, but again, it's because I've had a certain judge of their character. Like, and this kind of ties into the meaning of the episode, of where that energy that people put out, sometimes you get the read on them where it's just like, I get a good vibe from this person. I can share this, or I can tell them about this aspect of life, and you never know when that's going to come. Sometimes you end up oversharing and you're like, why the hell did I tell this person that? And normally I'm on the receiving end of that, to be fair. Or sometimes it's the other side of it where it's just like, oh wow, I've ended up making a really good friend and I'd have never known. But that all ties into what you're putting out and what they're putting out. Do you know what I mean? So if they're putting out an energy that you want to communicate with and you're like, oh yeah, I want to make friends with this person. But then every time you walk past them, you look like you've got the ump, you've got your head down, you look grumpy as hell, and you just barge past them. They're never going to want that interaction with you. So you need to moderate how you're perceived and kind of what you do in that sense to create your own reality. And as much as that again gets into a topic that is far broader than this video, those little thoughts and those little kind of ideas that you put out and the way that you carry yourself and the little projections of yourself that you put out, they hit things and they resonate with other people, and eventually you do it enough, you'll draw in the people that resonate with that energy. You just have to be consistent with it. Again, it's a lot of things are situational. Probably all of life is situational. Where depending on what scenario you're in, the outcome can constantly vary. So all you can do is best adapt that to where you're conscious of what you're doing in the situation. You're conscious, that you've been in that situation before and how you handled it and how this one may differ. The more your self-awareness increases when it comes to how you carry yourself across the board, the more you'll understand how this feedback loop works. Just like now that I've stepped behind the curtain of making a podcast, when I'm watching other people's content, I see how they cut things and how they get around things, how they carry themselves, what they do and don't cut out, how much they let themselves speak freely and normally without self-editing, how they self-edit. Because I'm more conscious of it now, because I'm behind the curtain of creating content myself. So now I'm more conscious of it. I'm looking to improve. I'm looking at my own content and how that compares. And that's going to be an ongoing process. Well, we do that with ourselves. We look at our friends, our family, and everyone we meet, even people we don't meet, people that we see on social media, in films, in comic books, in normal books, all throughout life, we'll see different personas and different aspects of people that we like and that we want to aspire to or we want to shape ourselves around. And the more you're conscious about pursuing, creating that and moving yourself into a point where you resonate with the person that you want to be, the more the other aspects will come into alignment. So the more kind of conscious you are of those things, the more conscious you become of those connecting things. I'm not sure if I can explain it more specifically than that, because it's vague within itself, because it all branches out. Do you know what I mean? So there's no way that I could have known what things editing and recording the podcast and doing these things are going to branch into before doing them. So, and even after doing them, like once I start talking to people, there's no limit to the type of people that I could talk to, or itchy nose. There's no limit to the amount of people that I could talk to or the avenues that those conversations could go down. And that to me is fascinating. But again, it's about building it beforehand so that I can have those conversations where I draw the best out of people and I have those exciting, interesting conversations. With episode 2, I feel I missed that. This episode so far, I feel like it's gone pretty good. I know it's a little bit choppy, changey. I've said a few times, I'm sorry about that. But if I can, I'll edit it out. I've got a little bit of editing to do on this video anyway, because I had to cough. But it's a learning curve. Like I say, there's certain things that I'll learn along the way that things will get a little bit smoother and a little bit more natural for me. But it is all part of the kind of learning curve of doing this. I will keep the kind of ongoing commentary on how the editing's going and everything else. And obviously, once I've done this episode, there's going to be new things I have to do in the editing process. So hopefully there'll be some new things that I learn from that I can bring to this, which is going to be interesting for me. But from the kind of overall aspect of how it's going along the way, I feel that it's definitely progressing, but there's a lot to work on. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, see, this is one of the problems here. Now, I felt like I was on a really good flow. Now, the speed of the episodes really slowed down because I kind of got to the end of that thought pattern, and now I'm kind of waiting or looking through my mind to see how it ties back in and what plates would intersect with this one, or what topics would intersect with this one. So I refer to everything in my mind as spinning plates. But the main thing is, it's all a work in progress. We are a work in progress. So the more conscious you are of that, the more things surrounding that will be drawn into your kind of peripheral vision in that sense. So when you start standing up straighter, or when you start smiling at people more, or saying hi to more people, once you start making these active small changes on a consistent basis, you'll notice that they intersect into other things. Do you know what I mean? So for example, you start saying hi to people and all of a sudden somebody offers you a free coffee or this or that. Or somebody says, hey, oh, I recognize you from this person, and you find out that you've got a common friend. You never know how these interactions are going to go, but just be consistent with the small changes that you make in yourself. And over time, you'll see how the projection that you get back changes as well. And the more you get that kind of feedback loop of, okay, once I change how I approach things, the feedback that I get from those things changes also. You'll start to pursue it more actively and more consciously, and it will become more natural to kind of self-adjust in that sense. And I think I'm going to end the episode there for the main topic, because I need to go grab a drink, and I'm not sure about drinking on camera yet. It's only juice, but I don't know how much the mic will pick up gulping and this, that, and everything else. It's just far easier for me at the minute to get a drink off camera. The seed for this episode, I did have placed in my head, saved for it, but I've lost it. I touched on it earlier in this episode, and I need to try to remember what it was. The seed for this episode is, what are you doing now for you in 6 months' time? Now, I've lost that seed about 3 or 4 times just trying to actually say it on camera. So I really hope I hit record, and I really hope this makes the final episode. But there is really so much meaning in that. Like, what are you doing in the now to benefit you 6 months down the line? What would you, in 6 months down the line, be grateful for you doing today? And on that note, I'm going to end the episode. All the best. Thank you for watching. Catch you later.